ತೃಪ್ತಿ ನೆನ್ಸ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಅಲ್ಲಿದ್ದೀನಪ್ಪ. Good morning, all. Is slide visible? Is slide visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So before starting the today's topic, let me see what are the topics I discussed in the previous class. So in the previous class, I discussed about a real world of specialization. Then I discussed about the private, protected and public interface with respect to C++ language. Then I discussed about heuristics, the trade-off design complexity and flexibility, right? So in the previous class, you studied the example for specialization. Today, you're going to study the example for generalization. So here, you're going to study the real world example of generalization. So before starting the real world example for generalization, let me brief about the real world example of specialization that we discussed in the last class. So what is the example? Say here we consider an example of a new company, and the new employees were there in the company, and then the class is created as the employee class, and we have the salary, sick time and medical plan in the new employee class, and also we have two methods, taxes and benefits, to calculate the tax and the benefits of the employee. Right, after 6 months, the company is running well, and the employee who worked for 6 months are considered as the full time employee, and additional benefits were added, for additional benefits were given to the employee, right? So say there, but after that, still the company is running very successful, and the company wants to hire new employees. Then what we have done, so new employees are also added. Then we defined the inheritance relationship, right? So initially we have the employee class, right? We have the employee class, and after that we new class is derived from the new employee class, or from the base class subclass is derived, right? So here, in the case of specialization, we have started with the base class, and the new derived class is obtained, right? So in the specialization, so please keep it in mind that in the case of specialization, we will start with the base class, and the new classes will be derived, okay? So in the case of specialization, we'll start with the base classes, and the derived classes will be constructed or derived by using the inheritance relationship. But when we go for the generalization, in the generalization, we'll start with the derived class. By using the derived classes, we are going to construct the base class. So that is the difference between the generalization example and the specialization example. Understood? So in the specialization, what we have done, we have started with the base class, and we are constructing the new derived class. But in the case of generalization, we'll start with the derived class, and afterwards we are going to construct the base class. We'll see that how it is. So here we are considering an example for the generalization. So it's a real world example. See here in this diagram, we have the different classes like apple class, orange class and banana class. Okay. We have three different classes, apple, orange and banana. And these three classes will have something in common. Okay, these three classes will have something in common. Let us consider for the apple class, what are the data members are there: weight, color, variety and seed number. For orange, weight, color, seedless and juice content. Whereas for the banana, weight, color and export country. So if you verify these three classes, there are two data members which are common in all three classes. What are those? Weight, color, weight, color, weight, color. See, this weight and color is the common data members present in apple, orange and banana. So what we are going to do is, since there are common data members available, and can we construct the inheritance relationship if we have only the common data members? So if we have only the common data members, no common messages or behaviors is available, then we cannot construct the inheritance relationship. Please concentrate here. So how we can construct, or when we can construct the inheritance relationship? We can construct the inheritance relationship when the classes are having something common data and behaviors. If only common data is there, we cannot construct the inheritance relationship. If the classes will have the common data and the behaviors, then we can use the inheritance relationship and we can construct the base class by using the derived classes. See here, so first if we consider weight and color, there are the common data members available and assume that no common behaviors are there. Then we cannot construct the inheritance relationship. And so, what is the main functionality of the object-oriented paradigm is it abstracts both data and functionality. Okay, the object-oriented paradigm abstracts both data and the functionality, and it provides the bidirectional relationship between the classes and subclasses. Okay, so it gives the bidirectional relationship and abstract the data and behavior, or abstract data and the messages, we can say. Okay, so if the classes are having common data and the behavior, then we can construct the, or we can use the inheritance relationship, or we can construct the inheritance relationship here. So first we have identified the common data member, weight, color in which are present in all three classes. Okay, so these are the common data member present in apple, orange, and banana class. Along with that, identify the methods or the message which are common in three classes. Consider for the apple class, what are the messages or functions present, cast and print present for the apple. Okay, or the apple consisting of cast and print. Similarly, orange is also consisting of cast and print, whereas the banana is also consisting of cast and print. Whereas the banana print method or the banana print function is specialized when compared to the other two print functions of apple and orange. Okay, but here we are considering that the methods are also common in three classes. So here the data members which are common in all three classes, and the functions or the messages or the methods are also common, then we can construct the inheritance relationship. Okay, so you can construct the inheritance relationship by using the inheritance relationship. We can construct the base class by using the derived classes. Now we are considering apple, orange, and banana as the derived classes. Okay, apple, orange, and banana are the derived classes. From these derived classes, we are going to construct the base class called as the fruit class. And the fruit class extract the abstraction. Okay, our fruit class consisting of the common data and the behavior. So what is the common data present in all three classes? That is weight and color, which is common, which is present in all three classes, that we can consider as the common data. So that will be placed in the base class. Similarly, we have the print and cast functions, which are also common in three classes that we are considering here, print and cast. So the base class abstracts the common data and the behavior, or the common data and the message. Okay, and this will be placed in the base class, whereas the derived classes consisting of the data members which are not in common. So here the apple class consisting of variety and seed number, and which is present only in the apple class, and hence that is present in the apple class itself. Similarly, for orange, seedless and juice content are the data members which are not present in apple and banana, and hence this is placed in the orange class. Similarly, export country, it is present only in the banana class, hence it is specialized data which is present in the banana class. Understood. So in this way, by using the derived classes, we are identifying the common data members which are present in all three classes, and also the common functions present in three classes. will use that commonality and will construct the base class by using the inheritance relationship, and the common data members and functions are placed in the base class. And a construction of such type of inheritance results to the generalization relationship. Okay, so the construction of such type of inheritance relationship leads to the generalization relationship. Okay, so here in the generalization relationship, as I already said, by we'll start from the derived class, then we'll construct the base class. But in the case of specialization, first we'll construct the base class, then we are going to construct the derived classes, right? In the specialization, first we'll start with the base class, then we are going to construct the derived class. But in the case of generalization, what we will do, first we will construct or will make use of the derived classes. From the derived classes, we are going to construct the base class. So this is an example of generalization relationship. Here we are considering the real world example of a fruit class and different subclasses of fruits as apple, orange, and banana. Any doubt in this? Any doubt in generalization? Yes. How many of you connected? All 10 are there? No. Who are there? 5 others. Yarar. Pranati connected, but BB of not connected, right? Okay. Understood? Any doubt in this? Any doubt in generalization?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Shall I move on to the new topic? Are heuristic related to the generalization? We'll see what is the heuristic with for generalization. So heuristic 5.8, it says that factor the commonality of data, behavior, and our interface as possible in the inheritance hierarchy. Means when we have constructed the inheritance relationship and keep the common data, behavior, and the interface at the base class itself, or try to keep all the common data, behavior, and the interface at the base class itself. That is about the heuristic 5.8. So the point of this heuristic is to allow as many derived classes as possible to take the advantage of common abstraction. Common abstraction means keeping the common data, behavior, and the interface at the base class. If more number of derived classes are constructed, then all the derived classes can make use of the common abstraction which is present in the base class. So what is the violation of this heuristic? So if we violate this heuristic, then we are going to keep the data, behavior, and interfaces in the different derived classes. If that is the case, then if you want to create or construct one more derived class, then all that data, behavior, and interface need to be placed in that derived classes. Means the complexity increases if we are not using this heuristic, or if this heuristic is not followed. Okay. So a violation of this heuristic implies that a particular abstraction will need to be redesigned and implemented in each of the derived classes. Why? Because we are not keeping the data, behavior, and interface in the base class. Instead, we are keeping the data, behavior, and interface in each of the derived class. That is the violation of this heuristic. Okay. And if we construct the new derived class, then also we have to place all the data, behavior, and interface in the new derived classes. So if we are creating n number of derived classes, then uh, then we have to keep n copies of data, behavior in each of the derived class. Right? But if we follow this heuristic, then instead of keeping the n copies of data, behavior, and the interface, what we can do, simply we can keep this data, behavior, and interface in the base class itself, so that this derived classes simply can access these common data, behavior, and interface by using the inheritance relationship. Okay. So if we follow this heuristic, then the design will be simple. If we not follow this, then the complexity of the design increases. So it is important that all derived classes in the hierarchy share the common abstraction. So what is the common abstraction? Common abstraction is nothing but the common data, behavior, and are the interface. So that should be placed in the base class. If it is placed in the base class, then all the derived classes share the common data, behavior, and the interface. Because the abstraction cannot be eliminated by a derived class. So this is about heuristic 5.8. Next, we'll move on to the mechanism of polymorphism. So, in your previous semesters or in your UG classes, you have already studied the what is the polymorphism and what are the examples for polymorphism and the implementation of polymorphism, right? You already studied in your UG, but here once again we'll see the mechanism of polymorphism. So if the polymorphism mechanism is not available, or if we are using the structure oriented approach, then how we can implement the this property. And if we use the polymorphism with respect to the object oriented languages, how this polymorphism can be implemented, that we'll see with the example. So here I'm considering the same example, that is the fruit class, which consisting of three subclasses: apple, orange, and banana. I'll consider the same example and I'm going to explain the polymorphism concept. Okay, so let us consider an example of a fruit class which consisting of three subclasses: apple, orange, and banana. Okay, and assumes that we have the common abstraction, that is the fruit class is there. From the fruit class we are using or the apple, orange, or banana classes are derived. Now let us consider a domain where I would like to walk up to a fruit, not knowing what type of fruit the fruit basket consisting of, and I want to compute the cost of a particular fruit. Okay, now let us consider that I have a fruit basket class or the fruit. It is a common class. Okay, so it consisting of all type of fruits, means it consisting of apple, orange, and banana. All are there in the fruit basket. Okay, that we are defining it as a class. Clear? And this class consisting of all three types of fruits: apple, oranges, and banana. Now I will ask the fruit class what is the cost of a particular fruit. Now I want to compute the cost of a particular fruit. Means I want to know the cost of a apple or the banana. Then how we can do that? Okay, so I will tell to compute its cost. Then the fruit basket class is an example where this type of operation might be applicable. Means now this is the fruit basket which consisting of different fruits. Okay, and I want to compute the cost. Then simply I'll ask the fruit basket to compute the cost. Okay, so this is the scenario. Then how it is implemented in a structure oriented, and afterwards we'll see the object oriented approach. So in this, we'll talk with or we'll consider an example of a structure-oriented programming language. Afterwards, we'll see the object-oriented one. Now, so my main aim is, or my question is, I want to compute the cost. Right. Then how we can do that? For some of the operations on the fruit basket, it is convenient to think of a fruit basket as a list of fruit. Okay, see here. So this list fruit basket consisting of fruits. Okay, so it consisting of list of fruits. What is the list? So these are all the list of fruits. It consisting of fruit 1, fruit 2, fruit 3, fruit 4, etc. Where this fruit may be the fruit 1 may be the union of apple, banana, orange, and this is also apple, banana, orange, and like that. So we have the list which consisting of different types of fruits. Okay, now the operations like how many, see here I have the how many operation. Okay, do not care about what type of fruits have been placed in the basket, because I want to compute how many fruits are there in the basket. then simply how many means if I send this operation or if I send this function, it will simply count the number of fruits which is present in the list or which is present in the basket, and it will not care about what are the types of fruits available in the basket. Simply it just gives the counts, right? And other operations such as the cast. Here I have one more operation, right? Cast is there. If I execute this, then these need to know the explicit type of fruit in the fruit basket, because since the fruit basket consisting of different types of fruits and each fruit cost different price. Okay, each fruit price is different one. Then if I execute this function cast, then this must know the explicit type of fruit present in the fruit basket, because here they are given the example that the cost of the fruit is 50 cents, banana cost is 40 cents, and orange cost is 60 cents. See here, the price of the fruit is different. The price of the fruit is not common, it is different. Hence, before calculating the cost, I should know what type of fruit present in the basket. So based on the type of fruit, I can calculate the cost. Understood? So this is in the structure oriented approach. So here we are talking about the structure oriented approach. In the structure oriented approach, here we are considering the fruit as a list of fruit which consisting of different types of fruits. If I execute how many this operation, then it will simply gives the number of fruits present in the fruit basket. Right. So if I execute the cast function, then this must know what type of fruit present in the basket. Why? Because the cost of the apple or the banana or the orange is different one. See here, the cost of the apple is 50 cents, banana cost is 40 cents, and orange cost is 60 cents. So hence, I cannot use the common function to calculate the cost, because the cost of the different fruit is different. Clear? So in action oriented programming, this type of construct is usually implemented as a structure embedded union or the variant record. So then if this is the scenario, then how this is implemented? So here the pseudocode is given, and a design that uses variant records to implement the fruit basket intuitively requires explicit case analysis, because here we have different types of fruits available, hence we are using either the explicit case statements, or we can make use of the nested if then else statement. Means if is it apple, then it returns some value, or it is banana, it returns some values, and if it is orange, then it returns some value, right? So here either I can use the explicit cases, means I can use this case 1, case 2, case 3, or I can use the nested if then else statements to determine what type of fruit was stored in the variant record. Now, the cast function for the variant record food will be like this. The pseudocode for is like this. So, function fruit cast. So, we are calculating the function cast of the fruit for the given type of fruit. So, by using fruit here, we are going to identify the type of a fruit by performing the case analysis. So, here it returns the type of fruit F. Okay, F returns the type of fruit. If F is apple, so if the type of fruit is apple, then it returns the value 50. Why it returns the value 50? Because the cost of the apple is 50. So when we execute the cast function, then if the type of the fruit is apple, then the value 50 is returned. Okay, because the cost of the apple is 50. Or if the type of fruit is banana, then 40 is written. Or if the type of fruit is orange, then 60 is written. Means we are executing the cast function to find the cost of the fruit. So how to find the cost of the fruit? First we have to find the type of the fruit. Based on that, the cost of that fruit is written. Okay, understood. So this is the pseudocode, and it is in this structure oriented approach we are using the explicit case analysis or if then else statements. Understood. And so here, what is the problem with this explicit case analysis? We'll see this. So here, The execution is very simple because only we have three types of fruits and three cases are defined, and then corresponding value will be written based on the type of the fruit. Suppose if I want to add one more fruit like grapes, then one more case statement is to be included in this pseudocode. Like that, if I go on adding the types of fruits, then I have to include one more case statement for that particular fruit. Okay, so here it is a simple one, just I can add one by one. But when we consider the real world example, then that example may consisting of n number of cases. The n may be 1000 or 10,000. If that is the case, then writing this type of code is a very lengthier one, and the problem arises. Why? Because whenever we are going to modify the code, because if I want to add the a new type of fruit, then I have to modify this code, right? I have to modify this pseudo code. So when I'm modifying this code, then there may be a chance that the errors or the bugs can be introduced into the program, or the bugs can be added into the code. Why? So this is okay. So for simple type of fruits or for simple type of systems, we can use the case analysis or nested if then else statements. But as this system becomes complex or as the system grows, then we have to add more and more number of case statements. Then what happens when we are adding the case statements? Because in the practical scenario, the system may consisting of n number of cases where the n value may be varying from 10,000, 1,000, 10,000, 1 lakh, like that. Then I have to add those many case statements into this pseudocode. So that is not possible, or the complexity increases. And one more problem is when I'm modifying the code, there may be a chance that the bugs can be introduced or bugs can be added into the pseudocode. When bugs are added, then it results in the failure of that particular program, or the program or the pseudocode will not be executed. It leads to errors. Then we need more time for the modification of such code or debunking of that code. So hence we'll go for new approach. Or instead of using the structure oriented approach, we can go for object oriented approach. This you understood. In the structure oriented, what happens if we simply want to calculate the cost of a particular fruit, then we can using the explicit case analysis pseudocode or the if then else statement, right? Any doubt in this? So this is an example for a structure oriented program. Any doubt? Yes.
No, ma'am.
Okay. As I explained, what is the problem with the structure-oriented code? Because the complexity increases as the system complexity increases, and there is a chance that the new bugs or the errors can be added into the code. Then it leads to the failure of that particular code because the code will not be executed. In order to avoid that, we are going to make use of the object-oriented approach. Okay, so the object oriented paradigm solves this problem through a mechanism known as the polymorphism or dynamic binding. So instead of using the explicit case analysis and or the nested if then else statement in the structure oriented approach, we are going for the new approach called as the object oriented approach. In the object oriented approach, we are making use of the polymorphism or dynamic binding. So, what is the main idea behind the polymorphism? And the main idea behind the polymorphism is that group of heterogeneous objects are treated like the common objects. Okay, so group of heterogeneous objects can be made to look as the homogeneous. So, for example, if you consider the fruit example, we have three different types of fruits: apple, oranges, and banana. Right? Apple is there, banana is there, orange is there. So here we have the heterogeneous objects such as apple, banana, and orange. These heterogeneous objects are made to look as homogeneous objects. So such as a fruit, okay, bunch of fruit, but this can be distinguished based on their own specific type, but that is known during the runtime. Okay, so starting we are constructing, we are making a group of all the heterogeneous objects to view as a single homogeneous object, and that we are calling it as a fruit. And each type of fruit can be distinguished based on their own specific type, but that is made only during the runtime. Then how to calculate the cost? Walk up to any fruit and tell it to give you its cost. Suppose I want the cost of the apple, then how it is calculated? By using the polymorphism mechanism. We'll see that. So I know the object to which I sending the message. It is not the fruit object because there is no such thing as a fruit object, because I want to know the cost of the object, right? Then I'm sending the message for finding the cost of the apple, right? Then I know that I'm sending the message not to the fruit object, because there is no such thing as a fruit object, because the fruit is an abstract class. Hence, it is an apple or the banana or an orange. Okay, so because this type of fruits are present in the fruit basket, right? So it may be the apple or the banana or the orange, where these type of fruits are marked as just a fruit. Okay, understood? So these type of fruits are just marked as a fruit. Why? Because in the polymorphism mechanism, all these apple, banana, and orange are treated as the homogeneous object. So here the homogeneous object is the fruit. Even though I am sending the message to a particular object, okay, apple or the banana or orange, but these three are masked as the fruit. But when I am sending the message, that will be given to a particular fruit object only. Yeah. So when the message is sent, the system figures out which type of fruit I am actually sending the message to, and calls the appropriate method. So here the method is, I want to know the cost. Then the cost method will be sent. Okay. Or the cost method will be invoked to find the cost of the apple, banana, or the cost of the orange. You can see this. So here, whenever I'm sending the message to know the cost of a particular fruit, so here I'm having apple, orange, or the banana, like that. Okay, so here see this. Whenever I'm sending the message, the system figures out which type of fruit I'm looking for. So whenever I'm sending the message, the system figure out to which type of fruit I'm sending the message, and identifying that type of fruit, that particular function is going to be executed or invoked. See here, when I sending the message, here it is going to identify what type of a fruit it is. So either it identifies it as a apple or the orange or one more apple or the banana. So once it identifies, then the corresponding function is going to be executed. See here, I have sent the message as the finding the cost of the message, cost of the fruit. Right. So first we are going to send the message to identify a particular fruit and calls the appropriate method. So here the system figures out which type of fruit I'm actually sending the message and calls the appropriate method. See here, the system figures out to which particular fruit I'm sending the message, and the particular appropriate function is going to be invoked or executed. Based on the execution of the function, I'm going to get the cost of a particular fruit. And so this is the main idea in the polymorphism, with for the example of a fruit and the derived classes of fruit. Okay, then how actually it is implemented? See here, they will see the implementation here. And here, before checking into this implementation, when we are talking about the polymorphism, we have two types of polymorphism. One is called as the true polymorphism, and the second one is called as the simply polymorphism or pure polymorphism. So here we have two types of polymorphism. One is called as the true polymorphism, and second one is simply called as the polymorphism or pure polymorphism. So here we are going to study both the types of polymorphism. First we'll look into the true polymorphism. Next we'll see the pure polymorphism. Okay. So we'll see the implementation of this, means how actually the cost function is executed to find the cost of a particular fruit. So this is the basic idea here. This diagram represents the basic idea of calculating the cost of a particular fruit. Then how actually it is implemented. See here the implementation of polymorphism. So the implementation is for the system to ask the object for its type at the time of message is sent. So here we are sending the message, that is the typical implementation is for the system to ask the object for its type at the time of message sent. See here when the cost function is sent to the fruit, then there itself we are asking the type of object. Okay, when we are sending the message, during that time itself we are asking the type of the object. Here the object type is an apple, right? So object gives the system a string with the name of its type as apple. So here this gives the object gives the name as an apple. Okay, so here it gives an apple because the cast function is sent. During that time itself it is asking the name of the object, and the name of the object is given as the apple. Okay, then the system hashes this apple string with the string containing the name of the message. What is the name of the message? It is cast. See here, cast function is executed, and what is the name of the message? The name of the message is cast. So here the hashing function, what it will do, it hashes the apple string with the name of the message. What is the name of the message here? It is cast. So it hashes the apple with the cast, and that gives an index into a hash table. So the combination of apple and cast gives an index to the hash table. See, this is the hash table, and this gives the index to the hash table where the address of the cast method for the apple class resides. See here, this is the address of the apple's cast method. So this combination of apple and cast gives the index to the hash table where the address of the apple cast method resides. Okay, then it jumps to that address, then it executes that particular method and finds the cost of the apple. And this type of polymorphism is called as true polymorphism. Understood? This type of polymorphism is called as true polymorphism. So how the implementation takes place? Whenever we are sending the message to the fruit class, during that time itself it is asking the type of the object. So when it is asking the type of the object, so it displays or gives the name of the object as the apple. Okay, then the system hashes this apple string with the name of the message. What is the name of the message? Here it is cast. So it hashes or combines both the apple and cast, and this combination gives the index to the hash table where the index it gives the index to the hash table where the address of this apple's cast method resides. Then this jumps to that address, and the apple's cast method is executed, and the cast of the apple is retrieved. And this type of polymorphism is called as true polymorphism. And how this actually implemented by using the C++, that we will see. So compiled languages such as C++, which are concerned with higher levels of efficiency, allow the implementers of a class to decide which function should be polymorphic and which function should be a monomorphic. Polymorphic means we are considering the binding. In case of monomorphic, it is a static binding. So here, the C++ allows the implementers of a class to decide whether it is a dynamic binding one or the static binding one. So in these C++ languages are the compiled languages build the jump tables for each class containing polymorphic functions. So here we have the each class like apple, orange and banana. For each of the object or for each of the subclass, the jump tables are constructed. Okay, these are the jump tables which are constructed for each of the object, and a hidden pointer is added to each object which point at its particular jump table. See here, For each of the jump table is constructed and they are pointing to each of the jump table. And the address of this jump table maintains the particular type of the base class we are examining. That is, the apple objects point at the apple jump table even if they are being viewed as a fruit. Here, apple, orange or banana, even if they are viewed as a fruit, but whenever that particular apple class is considered, then that is pointing to the address of the jump table of apple's class itself. So here apple V table, which consisting of V table, weight, color, variety, seed number, right? And this is jumping means even though the apple, orange, or banana is treated as the fruit, but the jump tables are pointing to a address of a particular jump table of the apple class or the orange class or the banana class. Right. So at the runtime, when a derived class is built, its constructor points the hidden pointer at the appropriate jump table. See here we have the constructors filled by an apple's constructor. So this is the V table and wait, it is mm, filled by the apples constructors, then weight and color is filled by the fruits constructor, variety and seed number for the field which is filled by the apple class constructor. Like that, for the banana we have the bananas constructors or the fruit constructor. See here we have a derived class constructor as well as the base class constructor, right? So at the runtime, when the derived class is built, its constructor points the hidden pointer at the appropriate jump table. So in order to execute a polymorphic function call, the system need only jump into the jump table when the constant offset defined by the name of the message. And here, no hashing of the strings or hash table problems or the collisions need to be addressed at the runtime. It is not required. So only what we will do, if we are executing a polymorphic function call, then the system need only jump into a jump table with the constant offset defined by the name of the message. So here, if the name of the message is then a cast, then it will jump into the particular jump table message. So no need of the hash table collisions or the hashing of the strings required here, because here we are making use of the jump tables. So jump tables are constructed for each derived class or each specific object, even though that object is viewed as a fruit. Okay, so this is implementation of the polymorphism by using the compiled languages or the C++ language. And as I said, we have two types of polymorphism. One is the true polymorphism that I explained here. So this is an example for a true polymorphism. And one more polymorphism is simply called as the polymorphism, or it is called as pure polymorphism. And what is a pure polymorphism is? A pure polymorphic function has no default definition in the base class. Okay, derived classes that inherit a pure polymorphic function are said to be inheriting for interface. That is, they are inheriting messages, not the methods. So here, there is no default definition in the base class for the pure polymorphism. And whenever the derived classes inherits the pure polymorphic function, then it is said to be a inheriting of interfaces are inheriting of the messages but not the methods. Here one example, if we consider the same fruit example, we state that the print message for the fruit class has a good default method. Okay, because that print message, here we have the print message uh, which gives the or it just simply prints the weight of the fruit or the cost of the fruit, right? So this print message is a good example for the default method. But the cost function has no good default. Why? Because the cost of the uh, function is having a special type in its own derived class. So it is not the default method. The fruit class wants to state that all derived classes of fruit must define a cast method. Why? Because the fruit class says that all the derived class of fruit must define the cast method. Hence, the cast method is not considered as the default method. Why? Because the base class wants to state that all the derived class must define the cast method, but it has no clue as what the algorithm should be. So this is the role of pure polymorphism. So what is the pure polymorphism? Here we consider the print function that will be treated as the default method, because the same method can be used by the fruit class as well as the apple, orange or the banana derived classes. But the cast method is not the default method. Why? Because the cast method, what the fruit class wants is each derived class must define their own cast method or their own cast function. Hence, it is not called as a default method. And this is the role of pure polymorphism. Means we'll say that print for the fruit is polymorphic and the cast for fruit is pure polymorphic. So in C++, an abstract base class is implemented either as a class that has one or more pure polymorphic functions or a class that has no public constructor. Okay, so in the C++, we are implementing the abstract class or the base class as either the class that has one or more polymorphic functions, or it is doesn't have a public constructor. Okay, so this is about the polymorphism with respect to the structure oriented approach, right? This is the structure oriented approach. After that, how the polymorphism is implemented by using the object oriented approach, and how the pure polymorphism is implemented, and the implementation of polymorphism by using the C++ language. Then what is pure polymorphism? So this is about the polymorphism. We'll see the heuristics for pure polymorphism or polymorphism functions, right? So if two or more classes share only common data, no common behavior, then the common data should be placed in a class that will contained by each sharing class. This is the heuristic 5.9. Okay, it says that if two or more classes share only common data, no common behavior, then that common data should be placed in a class that will be contained by each sharing class. And heuristic 510 says that if two or more classes have common data and behavior, see here in the 5.9 they have only common data, but in 5.10 it says that if the classes are having the common data and behavior, then those classes should each inherit from a common base class that captures those data and methods. So this says that the common data and behavior must be placed in the common base class, so that the derived classes can capture the common data and behavior which present in the base class. And heuristic 5.11 says that if two or more classes share only a common interfaces, that is the messages, not the methods, then they should inherit from a common base class only if they will be used polymorphically. Means if by using the polymorphism, if the classes consisting of only the common interface, then the classes should inherit from a common base class only if they will be used polymorphically. Then we can inherit the classes or we can have the derived classes, but these derived classes can inherit from a common base class by using the polymorphism technique. Okay, so this is about heuristic 5.11. And heuristic 5.12 says that explicit case analysis on the type of an object is usually an error. The designer should use polymorphism in most of these cases. So while explaining the polymorphism, I explained the explicit case analysis, nested if else then statement, right? But what this heuristic says, don't use the explicit case analysis or if then else statement, rather than use the polymorphism property. Okay, if a designer creates a method that states that if you are type 1 do this, else you are type 2 like this, means here we are using the if then else statement. Okay, but the better approach is to have all of the types involved in explicit case analysis inherit from a common class. So here we will go for the better approach where this involved in the explicit case analysis where it is inherit from a common class. And this common class defines a pure polymorphic function called as do this, and each type can write its own do this method. Okay, so here we'll have the polymorphic function called as do this, and each type can write its own do this method. Now the method the designer creates need only send the do this message to the object in question, because here we are using the polymorphic function as do this, as the designers creates need only to send this particular message. Then the polymorphism mechanism performs the case analysis implicitly, eliminating the need to modify existing code when a new type is added to the system. So do this, it is acting as the, or it is the polymorphism mechanism, and it is used implicitly, or whenever we are calling this function, that's, or whenever we are sending this method message do this, then it performs the explicit case analysis in a implicit manner. Yes, implicitly the case analysis is performed and eliminate the need of modifying the existing code when a new type is added to the system. So this is about heuristic 5.12. And so today you studied about the real world example for the generalization, then the mechanism of polymorphism and the heuristics related to the polymorphism. Right. So in the next class, we are going to study about the problem with the use of inheritance as a reusability mechanism. Any doubt here? So any doubt in the generalization example and polymorphism? Any doubt? Yes.
No, ma'am.
Any doubt here? Hmm?
No, ma'am.
Any doubt in polymorphism or any doubt in generalization example? Okay, understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then I will conclude my class. Then once again, my class is on Saturday. Allah, Saturday at 11:40. Okay, I'll end my class. And yesterday I sent the message for this webinar, acing the interviews. ಸಿಗ್ತಾ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಮೆಸೇಜು?
ಎಸ್ ಮ್ಯಾಮ್ ಸಿಕ್ತು.
Yes, ma'am.
ನೀವೆಲ್ಲ ಜಾಯಿನ್ ಆಗ್ತಿದ್ದೀರಾ? It may be helpful.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
If you have the time, you can join and